Hey everyone, I'm Scott, and I want to answer an important question for you today. Who should I marry? Now, when I ask that question, I don't mean who should I marry, because I am married. I'm married to Melanie, and she's an awesome person, and unfortunately, you cannot marry her, because I'm married to her. So, you're out of luck. I'm sorry. So, who should you marry? Since Melanie's off the table, who should you marry? Well, maybe you're at the point in your life where you're thinking about getting married, or you've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend and you're thinking about marrying them, or maybe your brother, sister, best friend's ready to get married. Maybe your kid is like marrying age and he's got a special relationship. Well, who should you marry? What kind of person should you marry? That's what I want to answer with you. And I want to think about this. As a Christian, I'm a Christian, so I really care about what the Bible has to say about who you should marry. Now, unfortunately, I can't just open up the Bible and say, Bible, who should I marry? And it's like, well, in Appendix B of the Bible, it says Scott should marry Melanie. That would have been awesome. That would have been so helpful. The Bible doesn't work like that, but the Bible gives us a lot of great wisdom to help us figure out the kind of person that we should marry. So let's take a look at some of that wisdom right now. Marry someone who has your values. When you think about marrying someone, marry someone who looks at the world the way that you do. Marry someone who has the same view of money that you do, the same view of family that you do, the same view of faith that you do. Because if you marry someone who doesn't have your values, you're gonna set up your life for a lot of frustration and fighting and anger. And don't think, well, I can just change my spouse's values after we get married. When I married my wife, she hated sports. 13 years later, she hates sports just a little bit more. So you're not gonna change your spouse, and you need to have the same values. In fact, look at what this proverb says. It is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. Now we could flip that around and say it's better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome man, a quarrelsome husband too. So it's, we're not just picking on women here. But the point is this, that if you can't get along with your spouse and your basic values, you're setting yourself up for a life of frustration. So marry someone who has the same values as you do. Next, don't marry for love. Okay, so I should probably say, don't marry just for love. Because we have this idea of love in our minds that's really like a super contemporary view of love. That really the kind of love that we see on television and movies or we sing about is like lust. It's super romantic love, super feelings-based love. But when the Bible talks about love, it talks about something much deeper. Let's take a look. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. You see, real love is a sacrificial choice, and it's different than the kind of love that you see portrayed all the time. It's more than just physical attraction and sex. It's deeper than that. It's a choice. It's deeper than just your feelings at any given moment. So don't just marry someone because you're in love with them, because guess what? Those feelings of love in a marriage, they go up and down all over the place. And you're gonna fall out of love for a while. And so it's in that moment that you have to choose real love. So don't just marry someone because you love them. That's just not a good enough reason. Also, marry someone you can trust. Trust is such an important foundation for a marriage. If you can't trust your spouse, then your marriage is gonna stink. I mean, if the person you're dating has cheated on you, or if you can't trust them with money, you should probably stay away. You don't marry them, because you're not gonna be able to trust them in marriage. In fact, maybe you're looking at someone now and you're dating them, you kind of like them, but you're just not really sure if they're a trustworthy person. The Bible says to pay attention to that intuition that you have. Take a look. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. You see what this proverb is saying is that eventually someone who's not trustworthy will be found out, will figure out who they are and what they're like. And so you want to choose to marry someone with integrity, and by the way, you want to be somebody who's filled with integrity. Okay, a couple more things. Marry someone you want to spend the rest of your life with. Now, I know this is really controversial, but Jesus made it really clear that God intends marriage to be a lifetime commitment. God expects you to marry a person and that marriage only ends when one of you dies. In fact, Jesus, he made this very clear one day to people. People asked him about marriage and what he thought about divorce and that stuff. And Jesus begins by quoting the Old Testament, and he says this, "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." And then Jesus added, "So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. Jesus is saying once you get married, it's like two people are mystically, spiritually, in some beautiful way becoming one new unit, one new person. And so because of that, Jesus says, look, what God has put together in marriage, don't tear apart through divorce. And so don't go into a marriage unless you're ready to say, okay, this marriage is a lifetime commitment. Make sure you want to be married to this person, not just for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, but for like 30 years or 40 years. You know, you're going to be married, you're going to live a long time, you're going to be married a long time. So maybe you hear that and you're like, whoa, I'm not ready to get married. That's great. Don't get married. You don't have to get married. But if you are gonna get married, marry somebody that you wanna spend the rest of your life with. And that leaves us with just one more thought. Marry another Christian. If you're a Christian, God tells you to marry another Christian. And the reason is pretty simple. It's because if you marry somebody who's not a Christian, you're gonna have all kinds of problems in your relationship. You're gonna have all kinds of fights over your values. When you have kids, what religion are you gonna raise them with? Or are you gonna just kind of try and be neutral? Well, that's not really possible. And so if you don't marry a Christian, it's just like your life as a Christian is all about God. It's all about knowing Him and pursuing Him. And if you marry someone who's not a Christian, their life is about something else. And it's gonna bring so much stress and frustration into your life that you're just at times gonna regret it. And that's why the Bible says this: do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? This verse is saying that as a Christian, you have to be very careful about who you attach yourself to, and especially when it comes to marriage. Because in marriage, if your life is all about following Jesus and pursuing Him, and you marry someone whose life is about something else, that's gonna bring so much disappointment and frustration into your life. And so the Bible's trying to say, here's how to have a happy and successful marriage. It begins by asking yourself, who do I want to marry? I want to marry someone who has my values and who is trustworthy and who I can love sacrificially, somebody that I can see myself living the rest of my life with, and then somebody who has the same faith commitment that I do. And so I hope you'll apply all this as you think about marrying someone, as you maybe talk to someone and kind of serve as a mentor for helping someone else find a spouse. You know, think about these things, because the Bible's not gonna tell you exactly who to marry. It's not gonna give you the name of the person you should marry, but the Bible gives you lots of wisdom on how to get a great start with your marriage. Well, thanks so much for checking out this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have other ideas about what the Bible says about how to find a spouse, or should I say how to choose a spouse carefully and with wisdom, go ahead and put that in the comments below. Also check out the other videos I have, and please subscribe to my channel.